What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Higurashi When They Cry Go. This is episode 20, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, picking up sometime after the last episode, we do get to, see a continuation of what's been going on in, St. Lucia Academy. Rika's still, popular with the other students, even hanging out with at least 3 or 4 of the students that, that became friends with her, I guess. But then, of course...
Seems like everybody there worships her now.
Yeah, it's... and of course, Sadako, of course, it's still, she's still herself. And then, at the beginning of the episode, she, walks up to Rika and then just tells her, pretty much everything she's done, working hard to try to get into the school in the first place. However, Rika tries to talk her down and saying that this is not the best time to really talk about this. And then, of course, Sadako just just walks out after that conversation, which of course, it gives Sadako a bad impression in front of the other girls. And of course, Rika tries to, defend her, for most of the time, but I guess, but it pretty much continues off, Sadako's displeasure of being at that school in the first place, or her, of course, Rika's involvement of being at that school in the first place, I guess.
I mean, it really seems to emphasize how much Sadako doesn't really fit in there.
No, I mean, she only went there is because Rika asked her to, but it just seems like Sadako's really starting to regret that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course at one point, she sneaks out of her room, her dorm room, to get into the main hall again, and then of course, she ends up setting up one of her old pranks again, and then the next morning, her traps end up setting off, and originally she wanted to hit Rika for it, but then she ended up hitting one of the other students, which caused her to bleed in the forehead. And of course, this lands Sadako into so much trouble. She gets thrown into, I guess, a juvenile detention facility.
Okay. Yeah. One of the girls basically tells that teacher we saw in the last episode that she thinks she might know who did it. And then the teacher, apparently the school literally has a prison, has some kind of a prison wing or something, because they throw her into a literal jail cell. I was kind of wow, they, I mean, was that really necessary? Couldn't they just maybe confine her to her dorm room or something like that? Is it necessary to have a jail wing?
Yeah, I find it odd that a school has something like that. I mean, I'm just shocked that they haven't even expelled her for that, for that stunt.
Yeah, or just suspended her or something. I think it's pretty inhumane actually to put somebody in a jail cell for something like that. I don't know how this, there hasn't been any sort of complaints about that at the school or something, but apparently that is somebody brought up on the forums when discussing this episode that the jail cell actually is mentioned in the visual novel. So apparently, or the jail part of the school. So I guess that is a thing. That's not something they just added into this anime like some people might assume. But it's still pretty freaking weird that that's even a thing. But yeah, Sadako is basically confined in this cell, and this is when she pretty much ends up completely regretting following Rika to this school, and starts getting desperate and kind of crying out for help. And this was the scene where I thought that we might get one of the witches to show up and offer Sadako help, because she specifically says she just wants to go back to how things were. So I was thinking that this would be the prime opportunity for a witch like Burn Castell or one of the other ones to just show up and offer her and basically say I can help you out. But to my surprise, it didn't happen at least in this part of the episode.
She gets released from her juvenile detention, and then
they show the passage of time. Obviously, I don't know how long she's been there, because they show that there's been some time passing, but I mean we're not really sure exactly how long she's been in there.
and I find it odd that they never mentioned like this incident again, like for the rest of this episode. And
no,
they just like, and like in the next several scenes, I think, Mion sends I think Rika and Sadako a letter that she's coming back to pick them up to, for them to hang out for another reunion club game or something like that. So Mion picks them both up. Like they talk about what they've been doing since then, and of course Mion, Rena, and Keiichi are all going to to university now. I forgot what it's pronounced. It starts with the G, but yeah. So they all go back to Hinamizawa, and to my surprise, they don't look. They don't look that different. Yeah, I mean, I would expect them to
they wear different clothes, but they don't like. I mean, I guess Mion is the only one that kind of look maybe a little bit, but it's hard to tell. Like Keiichi and Rena mostly look the same. At least like there was actually something like this that happened in the original season for Higurashi Kai, when they have like a like in the beginning of the series, actually they have like a flash forward, and they have Rika Rena as an adult, and she at least like they put some effort in to make her look different than how she did. But here she just like she looks. I mean she looks exactly the same.
It's just everyone other than like Rika and Sadako. Because Rika and Sadako look, obviously a little bit taller and then just about it as Rena's height. Yeah. But it's just odd that they didn't put much effort to make them look a little bit older than they should, considering that this flash forward takes place how many years? It's
1987. The original series takes place in 83. So
yeah, so 5 years, but they don't look as any older than than they should be. But so yeah, but pretty much like the majority of this next scene, they're just playing this game like in which they lose, and they wear like a freaking swimsuit or something like that. I don't know. Yeah,
it's basically the same thing we've seen from all the other instances where they've had their club games. That was what I guess this is one of the criticisms I have of the episode. I felt like they spent way too long on this scene. Like I felt like it could have just been like a montage or something instead of just a whole scene dedicated to them playing another club game and doing the penalty game again. Because I was like, okay, when are we going to get back to the plot? Like what is? I mean, I kind of understand the point of it, but it's also like I feel like just so much time was wasted on this.
Yeah, I mean, like they could have like compressed the scene a little bit to have like all the kids reminisce instead of like having to play this game. I mean, it's fun and all, but I felt it was a bit unnecessary, to be honest. So, so by the end of it, like they're about to all get ready to leave and go back home, but then of course Sadako decides to take one last trip around town, like just walking around and
I actually did like this part of the episode where she's like just walking around and seeing how much Hinabizawa has changed since he left.
Mm-hmm. And also the fact that that their old home that Rika and her used to live in got torn down due to like a freak weather storm.
Yeah.
And of course she at the end of the episode she eventually heads over to the Oyashiro temple. And then like she walks, at first like she's reminiscing again, but then she notices some like mysterious forces pulling her in. Then she walks up to the Oyashiro statue and she ends up touching it, which ends up cracking, and then a piece of horn falls to the ground, and then she touches it, and then she gets teleported to like this mysterious plane that that we saw Rika in the earlier this season.
Yeah. So basically she gets transported to the meta world. But yeah, the horn, I think it's most likely Hanyu's horn. Obviously, like, we were talking about this before we started recording. We're not really sure exactly, at least in the anime, they don't really say what happens to Hanyu after the events of the original series. Maybe the visual novel actually goes more into that. But the anime doesn't really give us anything about it, so we're not really sure exactly what happens to her. But I'm pretty sure that's probably Hanyu's horn. But yeah, after she touches it, she gets transported to the meta world. And this is where, like, I think a lot of us probably saw this coming because the opening unfortunately kind of spoils this. A lot of people were thinking it might not be this character, but it's of course that's who it ends up being. We see Featherine Augustus Aurora, who was a character who was one of the witches from Umaneku. I was calling that one of the witches from Umaneku would show up. I thought Featherine would be a bit too predictable because, you know, like I said, they spoiled in the opening. So, and from what we know of Ryukishi, he does like to throw out red herrings every now and again. So, but it seemed like in this case, it was pretty straightforward. It was actually Featherine. So for those you don't know, and you probably won't know if you've at least seen the Higurashi anime, Featherine is a character who is basically, like I said, she's one of the witches, and she's probably one of the most powerful witches in Umaneku. She can write and rewrite things, like basically, I guess she can write and rewrite reality, essentially. And nobody can really stand against her. Like there was, if you've finished the Umaneku visual novel, you know that some of the witches, like Lambda Delta, has tried to fight Featherine, but they're really not able to stand on equal footing with her. They just get destroyed. And just Featherine can just easily write that character out, or just say that something happened to them, and it'll become reality. It's kind of like, I guess it's a little bit like Pandora from ReZero in that sense. But that's kind of like who Featherine is. She has a different role in Umaneku, like she's a witch, and she's also a human character in Umaneku, but I don't think she's going to have that kind of role here. It seems like, from what people have said, that Hanyu essentially ends up becoming Featherine. I don't know exactly how that works, because I haven't really read that part of the visual novel in Higurashi, if that's where that comes from. So I'm not really sure, but some people basically said that's what ends up happening. So maybe they'll explain that in this anime, and like why Featherine's even here in the first place. Because like I said, it is technically kind of like a crossover, because she is a character, like, while she might have some connection to Higurashi, she's mainly just from Umaneku. So it is interesting to actually see her show up here. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of wondering what her role is going to be. I'm guessing it's going to be she's going to be the one that's going to grant Sadako's wish, and maybe in some ways manipulate her, but that's going to be kind of weird, because Featherine isn't really evil. I've said this when we weren't recording, when explaining who Featherine was to Blue Spade, but Featherine is like more like a neutral party. She's not really malicious or anything, so I don't think she's really... I mean, I would be surprised if she had any like sort of evil intentions by doing what she's doing. So I don't know, but I mean
she'd be mostly doing a favor for Sadako, but she'd be unknowingly dragging Rika back to that whole hellscape in Hinamizawa again. It's right. But we'll have to see like what happens in the next episode once Sadako like talks to Featherine about like what she really wants out of all of this, which we know like she's gonna have Featherine like manipulate events to restart the whole thing again.
Yeah, most likely. I just I'm excited about the next episode now, but I thought this episode was okay. The first half was interesting, I mean, because it kind of gives a little bit more context as to why Sadako and Rika's relationship kind of sort of soured after they entered into St. Lucia. But then like the very ending where they show Featherine, but the middle portion of it where it was mostly just like, and I kind of was hoping we would get something more after they reunite, but it's mostly just them going back to playing the same club games they've been playing. So it's kind of like, well, we've already seen this many different times, so it's not really anything new or interesting. And
it kind of just took away from that dramatic scene with Sadako in that detention facility.
Yeah, it's kind of like they forgot about the problems they had with one another, and I mean, I kind of was hoping they would follow up on that. Maybe where like, since they they forgive each other or like try to reconcile somehow, but that doesn't end up happening because Sadako just goes off and they just all go away and Sadako just leaves. So we don't really get anything like that. But yeah, I think the weakest part of the episode is pretty much just the middle half. The beginning and the ending of it are are probably the best part, which is sad because it's like you can really cut out most of this episode, and I won't say you wouldn't have missed anything, but it's also like, well, we don't really get anything that's, I would say, really like plot relevant happening in between those two things.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, at least we got a bit of an answer as to how Sadako is about to, I guess, fulfill her wish to restart events again. But there's like, I still have like a couple questions left. Like what happened to Hanyu since the events of Higurashi Kai? Because if we remember, for those that watched the final episode, Hanyu was living with Rika and Sadako by the end of that episode, and she never gets mentioned or even shown again, like in these scenes, like in the last few Higurashi episodes.
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but maybe it's something that also could have been brought up in Higurashi Ray, because there are some relevant plot relevant episodes within with that OVA. There is some filler stuff, but there's also some things that sort of like relate back to the plot of Higurashi Kai. So maybe it's something that because it's been a while since I've seen the original series and Ray. So it could have been, maybe that was mentioned there. But either way, I think we'll probably get some, more information on, well, more importantly, like why Feathering's even here in the first place, and what relation she could potentially have to Hanyu, considering, like we noticed in this episode, it was most likely Hanyu's horn that brought Sadako there. So maybe we'll actually get some explanation on what happened to Hanyu.
I mean, I could ask like how the hell Hanyu's horn got into that statue in the first place, but then I don't know. It's just. What was inside that statue was the fragment of that sword, but this time it's the Hanyu's horn. So that was kind of weird. Hopefully we'll get an explanation for that, but I don't even know if they're even going to reveal that though. But it just seems like they're just building up towards like the end part, I guess.
Yeah, probably. What I'm most curious about too is if we might see any other connections to Umaneku besides this. Like, that would be interesting. My hope is that maybe this series will end with some kind of a tease for a potential Umaneku remake, because I really hope we get that eventually. And I would be totally fine if we get like a Studio Passion remaking Umaneku with maybe Ryukishi behind it. But then again, I'm kind of concerned if they did that, maybe we'll get like he'll give it the Higurashi Go treatment, where he does like a weird like sequel or something like that, and instead of just like readapting Umaneku, I would rather him just readapt Umaneku instead of doing what he decided to do with Higurashi Go. Honestly, like
it'd be hard for me to do Umaneku, because
we already have a poor anime adaptation that doesn't even cover the second half of the visual novel. So, I mean, we have an incomplete adaptation anyway. So it's like, if he decided to do that, it would essentially just be for people who read the visual novel. So you're like alienating a lot of the audience, like potential audience for it.
Yeah. So it looks like we supposedly maybe like next week's episode might be the end of like of this current story arc, and then we'll finally follow up on what happened a few weeks ago.
Well, I mean, also we have to think back to the title of this arc too. It's called the Village Destruction Arc, so maybe whatever Sadako ends up doing, I'm wondering if it'll actually destroy the village or something. Like, because she is back in the village now. So
its kanji is called Sadako Washi Hen Sono Yan. So like I said, we'll have to see what happens next week and how this will go about. Maybe like she'll convince Featherine to bring her back to the days back during Hinamizawa, but in terms of like, maybe she'll find out like about the time that Rika was a looper at the time, and then like all the things that happened in Hinamizawa, and why she even chose to go back to that specific time in particular.
Yeah, I mean, Featherine would know something like that, so I anticipate her maybe like telling Sadako what Rika was going through. But then if like that would kind of make things worse too, because if she knew what Rika was going through, like it makes her decision to go back in time like that much worse, because she would already have known like what she'd be putting Rika through.
Yeah, I mean, her issue was like going to St. Lucia Academy in the first place, and her regret for even choosing to go there. So if she wanted to go back, she could just go back to the point and say, no, I'm not going to St. Lucia Academy. But instead, like all of a sudden, she's back in, back in Hinamizawa during the whole the whole, what was it, the Hinamizawa disaster, events that happened over and over again. So unless this is something that that she had no control over doing, but I mean we'll have to see like how this pans out for next week. Yeah,
but I don't really have anything else to say about this episode. I thought it was all right. I think the ending was the best part for me, especially being someone who's read all of Ubineku. Like there's so many theories I have right now as to how they might connect, might potentially further connect this to Ubineku if they even attempt to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to say.
No, I mean, it was an okay episode. I just felt like the whole scene, the reunion scene with everyone else, them playing games, kind of, I don't know, it kind of like
that was like the worst part for me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad, but I thought they could have handled it a little bit better. I mean,
it wasn't bad, but like I said, it's something we've already seen multiple times, during the events of the original series and when they covered it in Higurashi GOU, and we're just seeing it again. I kind of would have preferred like something else happen, and instead of just kind of going back to the same thing they've been doing.
Yeah, it just seemed like the whole thing with Sadako being in that detention facility like never really happened, and it was a bit disappointing that was never brought up again, or like had to done anything between like her and Rika.
Yeah, I was actually expecting them to, like I said before, I was expecting them to actually maybe try to follow up on that, because I mean, because it seemed like they were fine with each other when they were playing games together, and when after they finished, I was like expecting them to have some kind of a conversation or something, but we never really get anything like that. So I was like kind of surprised. I was like, well, I mean, there's kind of this thing that this unspoken, like, I mean, I don't know. It's like you two seem to have some issues with each other, but you're just not. It seems like you're just ignoring it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they'll have that argument. They'll follow up on that argument probably when we go back to that scene where when we find out that Sadako's the looper. Yeah, but yeah, I would have thought that they would have at least started off that, or no, actually no, that would have tipped off like Rika in the first place. But I don't know, it's just my opinion, like, and how that particular scene went.
Yeah. But yeah, so that all being said, until next Thursday, we will see you all next time.